You are almost never truly you are almost never truly alone, and yet you have never felt more alone in your life. That sentence should not make sense. You live surrounded by more human beings than any generation in history. Your phone connects you to hundreds, sometimes thousands of people at any given moment. And still, according to a 2023 report from the U.S. Surgeon General, roughly half of American adults report measurable loneliness. Not sadness, not a bad week. A chronic disconnection researchers now compare, in health impact, to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15 cigarettes for feeling alone. So what changed? Because for the vast majority of human history, this was not a problem your ancestors faced. Not because they were happier, not because life was easier, because they were never structurally, physically, socially allowed to be this alone. Let's go back and find out what your body was actually built for. In 1992, evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford University published a theory that would carry his name. Studying primate brain size against social group size, he found a pattern. The bigger the neocortex, the larger the stable social group a species could maintain. For humans, that number came out to roughly 150. 150 people. Not acquaintances, not followers. People whose faces you know, whose stories you carry, who would recognize you across a crowded space and remember why that mattered. Dunbar's number wasn't just theoretical. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies, including the Hadza of Tanzania, found band sizes hovering near that same figure again and again. Your brain, quite literally, was built to hold a village. Now picture that village, not a metaphor, an actual place. Smoke rising from a dozen fires within shouting distance of each other. Children who belong to everyone, not just their parents, running between shelters that all know each other's names. An argument breaking out near the water source, and within minutes, 3 other adults who are not directly involved step in anyway because in a group this size, everyone's business is structurally everyone's business. You are never more than a few dozen steps from another human being who has known you your entire life. Notice what that actually feels like. Someone brushes past you carrying firewood and says your name without thinking. A child grabs your hand for no reason at all. An old woman catches your eye across the fire and simply nods, and something in your chest settles because that nod means you are seen, accounted for, belonging to something that would notice your absence within hours. This is not a bonus feature of ancient life. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies describe this as the baseline, not the exception. You were touched, greeted, and checked on dozens of times a day without ever asking. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hurdy, in her research on cooperative breeding, found something that reframes what we think a family even is. Human children, she argues, evolved to be raised not by 2 parents, but by what researchers call allosparents, a whole rotating cast of relatives, neighbors, and elders who share the physical and emotional labor of raising the next generation. The isolated nuclear family, one mother, one father, sealed inside a single house, responsible for everything alone, is not the ancient default. It is closer to an anomaly. Here is where the story gets genuinely strange. Sociologist Robert Putnam spent decades tracking how connected Americans feel to each other, decade by decade. His landmark book, Bowling Alone, found a steady decline in what he called social capital, starting in the 1960s and continuing since. Fewer dinner parties, fewer club memberships, fewer neighbors you could actually name. Putnam wasn't measuring happiness. He was measuring how many people you could call at 3 in the morning. The number kept shrinking, and this is the part that should stop you cold. This decline began decades before smartphones existed, before social media, before anyone could blame a screen. The isolation started with something else entirely: physical space itself. Historian and urban theorist Dolores Hayden has written extensively about how post-war American suburban design, quite literally the shape of the houses and streets themselves, engineered isolation into the landscape. Wide lots. Garages you could pull straight into without seeing a single neighbor. Front porches, once the default gathering space of a home, quietly replaced by private backyards walled off from the street. You didn't drift away from your village. Your village was demolished and replaced, one zoning law at a time, with a floor plan engineered for privacy above everything else. Sealed off in your own house, commuting alone in your own car, coming home to that same house where, for the first time in your species' history, you might spend an entire evening with zero other humans present. Your ancestors would have found this arrangement almost unthinkable. Not lonely by choice, lonely by architecture. Psychologist John Cacioppo, who spent his career studying loneliness at the University of Chicago, discovered something your body has known long before your mind caught up. Loneliness isn't just an emotion, it's a biological alarm. Cacioppo's research showed chronic loneliness triggers the same stress response your ancestors felt facing a predator alone. Cortisol elevated, inflammation up, immune function suppressed. Your nervous system still treats isolation as a survival threat, because for most of human history, being cut off from the group didn't just feel bad, it got you killed. A landmark meta-analysis led by psychologist Julianne Holt-Lunstad at Brigham Young University, reviewing data from over 300,000 participants, found that chronic loneliness carries a mortality risk comparable to obesity, and yes, comparable to that 15 cigarettes a day figure researchers keep coming back to. Your body isn't being dramatic. It is responding with total biological accuracy to a threat that used to mean life or death. And now, the twist that changes how you look at your own phone. You would assume more connection should have fixed this. Billions of people now carry the ability to reach nearly anyone on Earth instantly. And yet, loneliness has climbed, not fallen. In the exact decades this technology exploded, researchers studying this paradox, including psychologist Jean Twenge, point to something uncomfortable. The type of contact matters more than the amount. A text is not a shared fire. A like is not eye contact. A group chat doesn't trigger the same response as a hand on your shoulder from someone who's known you 20 years. You can be in contact with 1,000 people and still be in the way your nervous system actually measures it alone. So picture your ancestor one more time. Not the whole tribe this time. Just one moment. They are sick, feverish, unable to gather food for themselves. Within hours, without a single phone call, someone notices. Someone brings water. Someone sits beside them through the night unasked, because in a village of 150 people, disappearance is noticed immediately. Help is not optional. It is structural. You, right now, could disappear from your apartment for 3 days before a single person outside your immediate circle would think to check. That is not a personal failing. That is not something wrong with you specifically. That is the predictable result of dismantling, piece by piece, generation by generation, the exact social architecture your species spent hundreds of thousands of years building. None of this means you are broken or bad at relationships. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it was built to do, telling you correctly that something structural is missing, the way hunger tells you something nutritional is missing. The ache is not a flaw in you. It is a signal working exactly as designed. The good news is the same wiring that makes isolation painful also makes reconnection remarkably fast. Researchers studying group cohesion find the physiological markers of belonging can shift within a single shared meal, a single person who checks on you unasked. You do not need all 150. Researchers on modern well-being point to something smaller. 3 to 5 people who would notice if you went quiet. That alone measurably changes how safe your body feels. You are almost never truly alone, and yet you have never felt more alone in your life. The 8 billion people on this planet were never the problem. The village was. You lost the one thing your ancestors never had to build on purpose, because it was simply how they lived. And somewhere underneath every notification, every scrolling thumb, every quiet apartment with the television on for company, your nervous system is still running the same ancient calculation it always has. Find your people, or the alarm doesn't stop ringing.